You know, from the beginning of the course, we've talked about a population, omega, of members on which measurements called x, that's the name of the random variable, with values in the real numbers. And we think of the real numbers as just decimal numbers, positive or negative, 0, and so forth. And if you make a bunch of measurements, maybe not on all of the members of the population, you have a list of numbers. And I'm going to just suggest this list of numbers as a row of dots like this, such that the numbers are ordered from least to greatest from left to right. And as we've already discussed, and I'm not going to go into the great detail, but you could have that the first two are equal, maybe even the next two are equal, but then there's a jump because I've sorted I'm thinking of the numbers in the list as being sorted from least to greatest from left to right. And so you automatically have several things to say about the numbers in your list. First of all, that there's a certain number of repetitions of the first value. In this case, the first value is repeated 3 times, and we give a name R1, let's say, to that value that's repeated F1 times, where R1 is some number and F1 in this case is 3. And then you keep doing that. Here's the second value, and that repeats a certain number of times F2, and you get to the last value. And let's say that your sample size is little n. So you have distinct values R1, R2, and so forth up to R little n. And those are distinct numbers. And you think of those numbers as actually being values on some horizontal axis. And I'm drawing them with different separations between them because you don't know what they are in general, but we can draw a picture to suggest that the values of the random variable x appear on this horizontal line, and the number of times that each of these values repeats can be arranged vertically over these values. So in other words, these 3 dots above R1 represent the 3 dots up here to the count of F1. So this height here is F1, and then this height here is F2, and so forth. I'm not doing this to scale. I'm just trying to suggest that these values have a certain number of repetitions. And so from merely given a list of numbers, you get all of these little letters to talk about the numbers, and we use algebra to relate these letters in various ways. For example, if you wanted to talk about the average value of this random sample, you could take F1 times R1 plus F2 times R2 and so forth, plus up to Fn times Rn. And what that does, that calculation is actually just adding together all of the values in the original list with their repetitions indicated by the frequencies f. And if you divide that by the total number of values in the original list, which I did not give a name or a letter for that, because I can just say that that total number of numbers is f1 plus f2 and so forth all the way up to plus f sub n. Okay? This diagram that shows the number of repetitions is a histogram. That is to say, I can think of it as a picture of values. So you think of these frequencies, these counts of the number of repetitions of distinct values as forming a graph, and that graph is called a histogram. Now, so I've brought up some data about the coronavirus over here, and you can see as of, I think this was March 15, March 15, worldwide cases are way over 140,000. In China, they got to 80,000, and look at this curve here, it levels off. And then Italy is still on the rise, this green curve. Iran is on the rise. It's a red curve. And the United States is this blue curve near the bottom here, still on the rise. So statistics is about the real world, and nothing could be more real than the spread of a pandemic across the world. Hold on a second. Let's look at some more statistics about this disease. Here's a graph which, when you first see this, you might think that this is a histogram, but on further study, it's not quite a histogram in the sense that I described in this abstract picture. It shows the percentage of the symptoms associated with coronavirus. So it says 87.9% of the time. And you know what? I have an interesting thing here. I have a magnifying glass where I can zoom in a little bit on that 87.9. You see that? Whereas diarrhea is only 3.7% of the time when you get coronavirus. And then dry cough is the second most common symptom, is 67.7%. So these are percentages, and they certainly could be considered to be associated with a histogram, but they're not associated with numbers. They're associated with symptoms. And these symptoms have no particular ordering. You can't say that shortness of breath somehow is worse than a headache, or that a headache is worse than shortness of breath. So there's no ordering on these symptoms. Then again, there is a kind of histogram called a categorical histogram, where you're just talking about categories and not assigning any particular order to them. So you could say this is a categorical histogram. We go further down here. Here is a histogram where it's in two parts, actually. On the left, there's a histogram of seasonal flu showing for each age range from 0 to 17, or 18 to 49, or 50 to 64, or 65 and above, the percent of hospital visits and illnesses for the seasonal flu. And that is an ordering into bins. So this would be a histogram based on bins in these ranges of age. And then you look to the right over here, and here's COVID-19, and you see it's a lot worse than the seasonal flu. And I'm not even looking at numbers. I'm just looking at the size of the bars in the histogram. And that's what histograms do for you. Right at the beginning of statistics, histograms give you a visual representation of the significance of the data without even looking at the numbers in the data. And that's very important. So this would be a binned histogram. And again, they're showing this in percentages here. Now, a percentage is also called relative frequency. And you can turn it into a probability by dividing by 100. You'd move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and this 6% here turns into 0.06 of cases in the age range from 60 and above. Here's another chart. This is not exactly a histogram. This is a mixture of data representations, and you can study that. By the way, the website I'm going at to see this is up here in the URL line. It's at Vox, and that's a good thing to visit on your own to study these examples in more detail than I'm going to talk about them. So let me turn off my magnifier again. There's another graph here. This is a histogram, again in age group, and this is talking about the case fatality ratio. So that's an interesting thing to know about, because, for example, for people 80 and above in age, the fatality is 18% out of the cases that come in that are identified. On the other hand, for little kids, let's say from 0 to 9 years of age, that case to fatality ratio is less than 0.01%. In other words, less than 1 in 10,000. Here is a chart that is not a histogram. This is a timing diagram. How death rates have changed in China and various parts of China over the last 3 months. Well, actually, when I look at this, it's from January to February, just 1 month. Right, this is from 1 January to 20 February. So, okay, so over a month. Wuhan, where my understanding is the origin of the disease, the blue line goes way down over that period of time. And in fact, other parts of China also show it going down overall. For example, this yellow line shows it going down overall in China. I'm not going to talk about any of the other charts here because there are several more, but you can see that diseases in general give rise to statistics. And the reason those statistics are important, well, are varied. One of the things is to see where not to travel. Another thing is to see where things got better. Another thing is to see where things are still getting worse, and so forth. I'm done talking about this particular case of statistics because I have other great examples. For example, I go to this interesting website called Galton Board. Let me show you that URL up here, galtonboard.com. Galton was the name of a person who invented this very cute demonstration of the normal probability distribution, which is the actual subject of this lecture. And this picture shows a gadget that can be purchased at various places, including Amazon and Staples and so forth. What they're showing is a bunch of beads being dropped through a bunch of wire pegs, and they bounce down through the pegs into a pattern. The pattern is shown by this bell-shaped curve, and that bell-shaped curve is the normal distribution. Now, this website provides also other examples, so I'm going to switch now to this additional part of the website. Again, I'll show you the URL so that you can go there yourself and look at these examples in greater detail and at greater length than I'm going to cover here. I just want to give you a sense of how many different things are normally distributed, how many different measurements, how many different random variables are normal random variables. And we start right off with gambling with 2 die. And one nice thing, as you can see here, is that there's an article that explains this picture. But this bell-shaped curve here is a perfect example of a normal distribution. And in particular, flipping a coin. If you flip a fair coin, let's say 100 times, you can count how many times it comes up heads each time you flip the coin. Actually, this is telling me different here. 16 coin tosses. Oh, my bad. So you should read this. Probability of heads is a bell-shaped curve for a fair coin. Birth weight of newborn babies. Here you go. Very normal. Probability distribution of the number of firing neurons. Now, this is a more complicated picture because it's showing 3 sort of bell-shaped curves for different temperatures. I think this T stands for, well, temperatures. I don't know what that means. You got to read this article to find out what that means. But just visually, let's just look at this red curve here. I would not say that that is symmetrical from the left to the right. It goes down more slowly on the right edge here. Don't you see that? compared to the birth weight of the babies, where it is quite symmetrical. So this is not exactly a normal random variable. It's skewed to the right. In other words, when you get a bump like this, where it goes down more slowly in one direction, to the left or the right, you say it's skewed to the left or skewed to the right, according to which goes down more slowly. Okay, here's average height of basketball players. Again, this is not exactly symmetrical. I would say it's skewed to the left, right? You see what I'm saying here. It goes down more slowly to the left. But, on the other hand, average female shoe size, that looks very symmetrical to me. Here's something about T-scores of pupils. And I don't know what they're talking about. Are they talking about students or eyeballs? You know, that's interesting. You got to read that, find out what they're talking about. Here's blood pressure. Very, very normal looking to me. Of course, in all cases, we're talking about taking a sample of a population. In the case of blood pressure here, this was a bunch of people that were measured. How many people were measured? Well, look, if you take the heights of each of these blue bars and run across to see that there were 50 people in that part of the sample at the middle, but then you have to add together the heights of all of the blue bars. That's F1 plus F2 plus F3, as I was discussing earlier. And so if you add together the heights of all these blue bars, you get the size of the sample for this blood pressure study. Again, read the article. Average number of hockey goals of one particular player named Alex Ovechkin. Did you ever hear of him? Not me, but anyhow, he's very symmetrical. He's normal. Average SAT scores in 2010. That's really normally distributed. And that looks like it might have been a very, very large sample. Because I'm seeing, you know, on the frequency scale on the left here, I'm seeing 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. So this probably represents millions of SAT scores. Read the article. And so forth and so on. Production of milk from cows is normal. All kinds of interesting things. Heights of adult English male criminals, normally distributed. So even criminals are normal. And so forth. You got to look this over on your own. However, I wish to move on and start talking more about work that you can do in this course for studying the normal random variables. The textbook for the course is Excel and Statistics, 3rd edition, which you can obtain by going to the cognoscitypress.com website, click on the Downloads button, click on the Books button, and place your order. What I want to emphasize is this red rectangle, which shows a back and forth relationship between the values of a random variable and the left tail cumulative probabilities associated with those values. To explore that relationship, I would urge you to go to page 119 in this book, where you will see an Excel spreadsheet with formulas involving the norm.dist function and the norm.inv function for going back and forth between values and left tail cumulative probabilities. And on this page you also see there's exercise 36, which asks you to see if you can duplicate this spreadsheet.